Balrogs, Shadow and Flame, the demons of Morgoth. In the First Age, they led armies that shattered kingdoms, slaughtered heroes, and nearly conquered Middle-earth. But by the time of the Lord of the Rings, they are gone. Only one of knowledge remains, Durin's Bane. So, what happened to the rest? Were they all slain? Did they escape? Or could others still be waiting in the depths, ready to rise again? Let's look at this today.
Build me an army worthy of Mordor.
Dark fire will not avail you! Flame of Udun!
The Balrogs, or Valar Olkar, were not mindless beasts. They were once Maiar, the same class of divine spirits that the likes of Sauron, Gandalf, and Saruman all were. Created by Ilúvatar before the world began, these spirits were corrupted by Morgoth and became his enforcers of terror. Unlike orcs, which could be bred endlessly, the Balrogs were few, but each was as powerful as an entire army. Dreadful among these spirits were the Valar Olkar, the scourges of fire that in Middle-earth were called the Balrogs, demons of terror. Now, there's one big debate about the Balrogs that we're just going to address right off the bat. Did they have wings? This is one of the most famous Tolkien debates. Did Balrogs actually have wings, or was this just a metaphor? In the Fellowship of the Ring, Durin's Bane is described with wings of shadow, stretching from wall to wall. Potentially sounds like real wings, right? But then Tolkien says it falls into the abyss, and doesn't fly back up. So, if it had wings, why didn't it use them? That's why many believe Balrog wings were really just metaphorical. They represent the shadow that flowed from their bodies rather than literal wings. So, while they might have looked like they had wings, there is truly no evidence that they could fly. With that being addressed, what is the biggest reason we don't see more Balrogs in The Lord of the Rings? Well, they were nearly wiped out. If we go back to the First Age, this is where most of the events happened. Balrogs at this time were Morgoth's shock troops, leading his forces against the elves and men of Beleriand, and they played key roles in every major war, but they weren't by any stretch invincible. If we look at an example now of the Noldoran Prince Feanor, the mightiest warrior of the elves, well, he was mortally wounded by Gothmog, the lord of the Balrogs, during the Dagor Nuin Gileath. So while Feanor's sons rescued him, he did succumb to his wounds after, and this battle proved that even Balrogs could be fought. Okay, yes, he didn't kill him, and it showed that despite even the strongest elf not being invincible, there was still the possibility of bringing them down. And this is where we move on to the fall of Gondolin, one of the greatest battles of the First Age, and here multiple Balrogs perished. It was Ecthelion of the Fountain who ultimately killed Gothmog by ramming his sword into his chest while drowning him in the Fountain of the King. However, Ecthelion perished in the process as well. It's safe to say they don't go down easy. And if we look at the War of Wrath, the ultimate downfall of the Balrogs came here at the end of the First Age when the Valar finally intervened. Their host swept across Middle-earth, destroying Angband and nearly all of Morgoth's forces, including the vast majority of the remaining Balrogs. It goes to show it took a force as mighty as that of one of the Valars to truly bring them down. And at most, at the end of all this, only a handful survived, retreating into the deep places of the world. In Tolkien's early drafts, Balrogs were far more common. In the Fall of Gondolin, they appeared in huge numbers, with hundreds being slain in battle. But later on in those later writings, Tolkien really changed this completely, stating that no more than 3 to 7 Balrogs ever existed. They were not mass-produced monsters, but fallen Maiar, each as powerful as an entire army. This makes the War of Wrath even more devastating, because it means that almost every Balrog in existence was wiped out. If any survived the First Age, they were no longer a force of war. They were remnants, hiding in darkness. And this is where Durin's Bane comes into the story. The only Balrog we do get to see in The Lord of the Rings is Durin's Bane, the demon awakened beneath Moria by the dwarves. This Balrog was one of the few that escaped the War of Wrath. Instead of dying alongside Morgoth, it fled underground, retreating into the deep pits beneath the misty mountains, far from the eyes of the Valar. For thousands of years, it lay dormant, forgotten, until those pesky dwarves of Khazad-dum dug too deep, mining for mithril. When they broke into its prison, Durin's Bane rose in wrath, slaughtered King Durin VI, and drove the dwarves from their halls. Moria and the incredible kingdom of Khazad-dum was abandoned, left as nothing more than a cursed ruin. And there it waited again, and waited, and waited, until the Fellowship of the Ring arrived. When Gandalf the Grey faced Durin's Bane, he wasn't just fighting a monster. This was a battle between two of the Maiar. A battle between a divine warrior of light and a fallen demon of shadow. This moment proves something potentially huge. If Gandalf could defeat a Balrog, he could have fought Sauron himself if he had been allowed to unleash his full power. But that whole discussion about Gandalf, his full Maiar power, and what his body could do is definitely a subject for another video. And we have touched upon it before in other Gandalf videos, so please go and check those out. But what this does do is raise an even bigger question. If the Balrogs were so powerful, why didn't Sauron summon them to his side? And to be honest, the answer is fairly simple. He had no power over them. Balrogs were Morgoth's demons, bound to his will alone. When Morgoth fell, the Balrogs were leaderless, scattered, and possibly uncontrollable. And here's the key difference. Morgoth ruled through fear and brute strength. His Balrogs followed because he was the most terrifying being in existence. Whereas Sauron, he ruled through deception and control. He didn't just overpower enemies, he manipulated them. If Sauron had ever tried to control a Balrog, it's just as likely the Balrog would have attempted to destroy him instead. But what if Sauron had found and discovered a way to control the Balrogs, you may ask? Would the Free Peoples have stood a chance if a Balrog led Mordor's armies? If one Balrog, Durin's Bane, was enough to wipe out the entire dwarven kingdom of Moria, imagine what an army of them could have done. It is definitely a very interesting thought, and one that doesn't really have a definitive answer, so you can let your imagination run wild. But if the likes of Durin's Bane stood on that front line as the Rohirrim charged in at the Battle of the Pelennor Fields, I'm not sure it would have given them such a glorious charge. So with all that, does this mean that Durin's Bane was truly the last of its kind? Well, Tolkien never gives a definitive answer, and that is so often the case. He suggests that some may have fled and still lie deep beneath the earth, waiting. Could another Balrog still be sleeping in some dark cavern, waiting to rise again? Could there be more demons of fire hidden in the roots of the mountains? And if so, will they ever wake up? The truth is, and it might frustrate some, we just don't know. But we can without a doubt say, if one ever did return, it would be one of the deadliest creatures Middle-earth would face in that age. So there we have it. Were the Balrogs truly gone? The War of Wrath wiped out almost all of them, the few survivors vanishing into the depths lost to time. And we will never truly know if any are still down there, biding their time. And that is perhaps the most terrifying thing. But here is the real question that comes with that. What if one still does remain? What if deep beneath Middle-earth, in some forgotten cavern, a Balrog is still sleeping, waiting? And what if one day it wakes? But now it is your turn. Do you think that there could still be more Balrogs hidden beneath Middle-earth? Or was Durin's Bane truly the last of its kind? Share your thoughts in the comments below. And along with this, if you would like to support the channel in other ways, please consider our Patreon. You can't always rely on YouTube itself, so this extra support will really help the channel stay strong and keep us getting that content out for you. But with that, thank you for spending just some of your time with me today, and I will see you next time on The Broken Sword.